Hi everyone, and welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who don't know, I'm Bia, and Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens and learn about spiritist topics and teachings, because we don't come in contact with these teachings at school, and mostly when we come in contact, it's with an adult lecturing it to us, and sometimes that might be confusing for us to understand, or just picking up the book and reading it ourselves is difficult, and we don't have a lot of time for that. So hopefully here we can split up spiritist topics and teachings and learn them together and make it easy to understand and apply it to our daily lives. For the past few weeks, we've been talking about the spirit hierarchy. So basically, it's kind of like the scale that spirits are on based on their evolution, how much they've progressed. So we said if we look at it like a little triangle, at the top, the little tippy top, there's the pure spirits who are good, who are perfect. And then in the middle, there's the good spirits who they're striving to do the best that they can. They're working to be perfect, but they're not quite there yet. And on the bottom is the imperfect spirits. And that doesn't mean that they're terrible. That doesn't mean that they're doing horrible things, but it could be some of them. But it just means that maybe they're not doing anything bad, but maybe they're not doing anything good either. So they're just kind of stuck in that intermediate phase. But as we know, spirits aren't stuck to one specific spot on that hierarchy. We can move as we evolve and as we progress. So that's what we've been talking about for the last few shows. And today we're going to continue on with the discussion, talking about the progress of spirits and how they move from different levels. And just a reminder for you guys, if you don't remember, because you guys aren't looking at the book physically, in the spirits book that we're reading through, it starts off with a question that Allan Kardec imposed to, or the mediums imposed to the spirits. And so it starts off with a question, and those are in italics so you can see it. And then next, in quotations, it's the answer of the spirit, what the spirit said to that question. And then sometimes there's, in a smaller font, there's Allan Kardec's comment. So it's not what the spirit's saying, it's directly what he's saying it, but he's kind of trying to make it more simple for us too. So that's how the book is laid out. So let's start right where we left off last week, which is question 122. At their origin, how are spirits free to choose between good and evil when they are not yet self-aware? Is there some inner principle or tendency that leads them more towards one side or the other? So here the question's asking, so at the beginning of the spirit's life, whatever the spirit may be, whoever the spirit may be, so at the beginning, how do they choose between good or bad if they're not really self-aware, if they don't have any knowledge? It's like a baby. When you're a baby, you don't know anything besides, okay, I'm feeling hungry, I'm feeling sad, I'm missing something. You don't really understand anything. So how can you choose from right or wrong if you're not self-aware yet? So is there something that leads them towards one side or the other? That's what the question's asking. And then the spirits answer. Free will develops as the spirit acquires self-awareness. Therefore, there would be no actual choice if it were made by a cause of extraneous to the spirit's will. The cause is not within the spirit, but outside, in the influences to which it yields in virtue of its free will. This is the great symbol of the fall of humankind and original sin. Some yield to temptations, others resist it. So here they're kind of saying that the first sentence is that free will develops as the spirit acquires self-awareness. So first you have to be self-aware to be able to do things freely, to be able to do what you want. First you have to know yourself and know what you want. And they're saying that sometimes it's not about within the spirit, it's not, oh, I want to choose good or I want to choose bad, but sometimes it's the stuff that we're around, stuff that we're influenced by. So maybe you'll say, oh, like a lot of people, oh, I'll never smoke, I'll never do something like that. But then when you're faced in that situation and there's peer pressure and maybe you do it. And that's why they're saying that maybe it's not about your it's not about within your spirit yourself, but it's when you're facing an obstacle and how you overcome it, how you face it. When you come in contact with something, it's how you deal with it. And that kind of leads you to the good and bad. It's not like you sit there looking at the bad path and the good path and you decide. It's more about how we have to experience things to understand what is truly good or bad. And sometimes we ourselves don't have to experience it. Like with drugs and alcohol and smoking and all that stuff, we don't have to experience it. We can see how we can look at other people's experience and already learn from that so that we don't have to go through that and suffer that. But some people, you need to experience it to learn it. But we can also see someone else's experience and learn from that ourselves. Then they ask a little sub-question, and they say, where do the influences that act upon spirits come from? So they're saying, okay, so if it's not from the spirit itself, it's not the spirit saying, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. If they're being influenced to do something, where does the influence come from? And the spirits answered, from the imperfect spirits who seek to involve and dominate them, and who delight in making them succumb. This is what represents in the allegory of Satan. So they're saying that, so who's providing these influences that are affecting what we choose? And they're saying that there's imperfect spirits who sometimes they think it's funny to trick people, like we were talking about when we were putting them in a little scale. Sometimes they think they're not trying to exactly do you harm, but they think it's funny to trick you, or they want to feel empowered. They want to feel like you're lower than them. So they're trying to trick you and deceive you, and they're trying to make you do sometimes bad stuff. And they said that's what represents the allegory of Satan. So when people say Satan, sometimes that could be perceived as just a bad spirit or a malicious spirit who is trying to trick you, trying to make you do bad stuff. It doesn't mean that there's exactly one specific Satan or that that person's always going to be a Satan. There could be a lot of imperfect spirits that are just tricking people and being deceitful, and it's not one exact person, body that we call Satan. And of course that person eventually will evolve, and in trillions and trillions of years they will be a perfect spirit too. So it's not like in the movies when the Satan is the same Satan. And there's another sub-question here, and it says, does this influence act on a spirit only when it first comes into being? So here we're talking about the beginning, the origin. So let's say if we're looking at one human life, it would be at birth. So is it at like the birth of the spirit that this influence is acted upon? And it says, the spirits say, it follows the spirit over the course of its existence until it acquires so much self-control that evil spirits do not bother it any longer. So they're saying that no, the spirits, the imperfect spirits don't just have control in the beginning. They don't just influence in the beginning. They can continue influencing through your whole existence until you're able to block them out. Like in school, if there's bullies, those bullies are going to keep following you and following you and following you and following you until there's a point that you forget about them, until you don't care, until you stand up, until you talk to someone. So they can stick with you for a long, long, long time until you're able to push them out, until you're able to learn to speak out, to tell someone. Question 123. Why does God allow spirits to follow the path of evil? The spirit said, how do you dare ask God to give account for all the divine acts? Do you think you can delve into God's will? Instead, you should say that God's wisdom is found in the freedom of choice that has been granted to each spirit, so that each one may have the merit of its own deeds. So here they ask, so how does God let people do evil things? Why does he let them do bad stuff? And the spirits here, they were kind of taken aback. They were kind of insulted. They said, how do you dare ask that? But what they're saying is that God, we're not talking about that God's letting people be evil. What he is doing is he's letting us all have our free choice. That Because if you say, oh no, you have to do this, you have to be good, you have to be good, you have to be good, maybe that spirit isn't really improving because they're forced to do good, but they're still having bad thoughts. So they need to maybe experience that to get better from it. So he's just giving us the freedom of choice that we can choose and decide, and he's helping us that when we do choose the wrong path, he'll help us out of it and he'll help us learn from it. But he's giving us the freedom of choice, not letting us follow the path of evil. Question 124. There are spirits who follow the path of the absolute good from the beginning, while others follow the path of absolute evil. Aren't there gradations between these two extremities? The spirits answered, yes, certainly. They are the paths of the vast majority. So they're saying that some people, right at the beginning, they choose, okay, absolute good, they don't have any inclination towards evil. And some people, they go the exact opposite, and they are completely evil, and they're completely taken aback by evil influences, and they're absolutely evil, and some are absolutely good. So they're saying, are there the ones in between? And they're saying that yes, of course, and the ones in between is the one of the vast majority. It's what most people experience. Most people, us, every common day person, we don't come in as absolutely good, although we may like to think we did, but if we were absolutely good, we wouldn't be going through these trials that we are now. So some people, so we are trying to do good, but there's still some little bumps in the road that we have to overcome. And some people, maybe they're doing evil, but they still have some good stuff. So usually it's not on the extremes, and most of us are in these in-between paths, doing some good, some evil, until we get onto that good path. Question 125. Will those spirits who follow the path of evil be able to arrive at the same degree of elevation as the others? The spirits answered, yes, but the eternities will be much longer for them. So we're talking about eternities is the word that they use, and they even italicized that word because that's saying how long it's going to take. If we think about some spirits, some people think that they're never going to be good. Like if we think of Adolf Hitler, who did horrible things while on this planet, but we know that eventually in eternities, in infinite amount of years, he will become good. He will learn, and he will get better. So even those spirits who follow the absolute path of evil, just like Adolf Hitler, they will be able to elevate themselves, and they will be able to overcome that. It'll just take much, much, much longer because they still have to get over that evil path that they're on right now. And then Allan Kardec puts his own little sub-comment in, and he says, we must understand the expression eternities to mean the way in which imperfect spirits regard the perpetuity of their suffering, whose ends are not allowed to foresee. This belief is renewed every time they succumb to a trial. So when they say eternities, is that when some evil spirits, when they have to suffer for their consequences, they feel like it's taking eternities for them to move over, to succumb to that trial, when trying to get over it. And so every time they have a new trial, they feel like it's going to take eternity to overcome it. So after you overcome this eternity of, if you did one bad thing, and it's going to take you eternity to come over that thing, and then there's going to be another one. And then you have to take an eternity to come over that. So if you're already in the good path, you have less of these little bumps in the road. But if you're on the evil path, there's a lot more bumps that you're going to have to overcome. So it's going to take a much longer eternity, but we will all elevate ourselves. Question 126. In God's sight, are the spirits who reach the highest degree after having passed through evil less mysterious than the others? The spirits answered, God looks upon those who have gone astray with the same regard and love for all of them in the same way. They are called evil because they have succumbed. Before that, they were nothing more than simple spirits. So they're saying that does God treat people unequally? And of course he doesn't. They're saying that he looks at them, they just got astray. They just succumbed, like they say, we succumb to peer pressure. When you succumb to peer pressure, is that if people are telling you to do something, you succumb to it is you give in. You're like, okay, I'll do it because everyone's telling me to do it. So God sees that. He says, oh, they succumbed to the evil. They were trying to get him, and he was like, oh, fine, if everyone's doing this, I'll do it. But eventually, the Spirit overcame that, and he got better. And God still loves all of us equally, no matter what we fell into. Question 127. Are all spirits created equal with regards to their intellectual faculties? So this is saying, intellectually, are we all created equal? The amount of knowledge that we have, are we all created equal? Spirit said, they are all created equal, but since they do not know where they come from, they must develop their free will. They progress in both intellectual and morality at different rates. So they're saying that spirits were all created equal, but depending on our free will, depending on the influences we have, depending on what choices we make, we go through different things that we have to learn. And maybe if you think about it, maybe in this life, if you're a doctor, you learned how to be a doctor, but the person who's a teacher maybe knows nothing about being a doctor. So even though you both are learning and you're both progressing, you're still not learning everything because the teacher doesn't know how to be a doctor and the doctor doesn't know how to be a teacher. So you're learning and developing at different rates. Then Allan Kardec put his own comment, and he said, spirits who follow the path of good from the beginning are not therefore perfect because of it. Although they have no evil tendencies, they must still acquire the necessary experience and knowledge needed for perfection. We could compare them to children who must develop to learn, no matter how good their natural instincts are. They do not suddenly go from infancy to adulthood without a transition. Just as there are individuals who are good from childhood and those who are evil, there are spirits who are good or evil from the start, but with the crucial difference that a child possesses its instinct already formed, whereas a spirit is neither evil nor good at its formation. Rather, it has both tendencies, taking one direction or the other in virtue of its own free will. So here, that was a lie, and we'll break that up. So he's basically comparing the spirits to children, and that even though some children are more advanced and they seem to know more, they have more knowledge, they still have to go through that learning phase. Like maybe if these two children, they're in class, and one of them already knows most of the ABCs, but the other one doesn't, they still both have to learn it to improve and to progress. And so even if spirits are already choosing the path of good, they still have to experience things to be able to move on. They're not going to go straight to perfect. They still have to go through experiences, and if they experience it and they don't find it's not difficult for them because they're choosing the path of good, or they can overcome obstacles easily, then it's fine, because then the obstacles will just go faster for them. So we also have to experience stuff before we reach perfection. No one's just gonna snap of a fingers be a perfection. So no matter which path we start off at, we do have to go through experiences, and the way we handle these experiences are gonna determine how fast we get to perfection. And now we're gonna move on to the last part of chapter 1 in part 2 of the book, which sounds kind of confusing, but this one is titled Angels and Demons, and it starts off with question 128. Do the beings we call angels, archangels, and seraphim form a special category that is different in nature from that of other spirits? The spirits answered, no. These are the pure spirits, those at the highest degree of the hierarchy, and inwardly perfect in every way. So, these spirits, that when people say angels or archangels or any of these names that are just these godly beings that are so good, these are the pure spirits. If we're looking at the pyramid again, these are the pure spirits all the way to the top who are at the highest degree of purity, and we call them angels, but again, they're just those pure spirits. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment, and he says, the word angel usually rouses from the idea of moral perfection. However, it is frequently applied to all beings, good or evil, that are beyond the human sphere. We say a good angel, a bad angel, an angel of light, and an angel of darkness. In this case, the term is synonymous with spirit, and they're used here to reference to the good beings. So the word angel kind of represents spirit, and the way we talk about the angels, sometimes they say the dark angel, so that wouldn't be a spirit exactly, a perfect spirit, but it's just something above our earth, what we know right now. So basically, the term angel, we're referring to these pure spirits. Question 129. Have the angels also passed up through all the degrees? The Spirit said, they have passed up through all of them, but as we have already said, some accept their mission without grumbling, and thus were able to arrive more quickly. Others took a longer or shorter amount of time to reach perfection. So they're saying, did the angels go through all the scales, these pure spirits? Did they start off at the bottom like everyone else? And they're saying, yeah, they did. They passed through all the different trials that everyone has to pass through, but it just depends how quickly they got there. It depends on their willingness to work. So, like if there's a test, and you say, oh, I don't want to do this test, but okay, we have to do it, so I'm going to study, I'm going to do good, and then I'm going to move on. So you study, you do good, and you move on to the next test. Or you could have seen the test and say, oh no, this is going to be super hard, I'm not going to do it, I can't do it. So then you don't do it, you don't study, you do bad, and then you're stuck there again. You have to do the test again. And then you say, nope, if I failed it last time, I'm not going to do good this time. So then you don't study, and then you fail it again. So then you're stuck doing that same test over and over again, when you could have just studied, done good, and moved on to the next thing. So depending on how you face your obstacles and how you try and overcome them really determines how fast you're going to evolve and how fast you're going to get to perfection. Question 130. If the opinion holding that there are beings that were created perfect and superior to all others from the start is erroneous, how does one explain their presence in the tradition of nearly all cultures? So they're saying that if spirits had to go through all these different levels to get to be an angel per se, to get a perfect spirit, how come in all cultures we see examples of angels if the angels have to progress like everyone else? And the spirits answered, you need to understand that your world has not existed for all eternity, and that long before it existed there were already spirits of the highest degree. Hence, people assume that they have always been perfect. So there are spirits who have been perfect before Earth was even created. Before Earth was even a thing, spirits already went through all their trials on other planets, and they already reached perfection. So when our world was created, when Earth was created, then some cultures, basically all cultures, have these angelic beings that have always been perfect, because they've always been perfect to our knowledge, because we don't know what they went through on other planets and other places. So to us, they've always been perfect, but in their own time, they had to go through all the trials that we have to. Question 131. Are there demons in the usual sense of the word? The spirits answered, if there were demons, there would nevertheless be the work of God. But would God be just and good in creating unfortunate beings that are eternally turned towards evil? If they are demons, that they reside on your less evolved worlds and on other similar ones. They are the hypocritical men and women who portray a just God as evil and a vindictive one. They are those who imagine they can please God by the abominable behaviors they commit in the divine name. So these spirits here, the demons that we're calling them, so if there were demons, would God be just and good? Would he create beings that are always going to be evil, that are turning towards evil? So it's saying no, of course there aren't specific demons like this that are stuck in evil, that God created them evil, but there could be evil spirits that are in that evil phase right now. They will move on, but right now they're in that evil phase, and they might just be people living on our world or worlds similar to ours, like we were talking about, like Adolf Hitler. He's gonna move on, even though he was on a very evil path here. He's going to progress and move on, but right now he's inclined towards evil. And then Allan Kardec puts his comment in, and it goes on for a few paragraphs, so we'll split it up together and go through it slowly. Only in its modern meaning does the word demon imply the idea of evil spirits, because the Greek word daemon, from which it derives, means genius or intelligence, and applies to all good or evil incorporeal beings without distinction. So it came from the word that was genius or intelligence, so it applied to evil or good. So sometimes people who are evil, they accomplish so much, they have high intelligence because they can do so much intellectually, but morally they're very, very far behind. So they could be intelligent, just not morally evolved. According to the common meaning of the word, demons are essentially malevolent entities, but like everything else, they would have to be one of God's creations. God is supremely just and good, and could not have created beings predisposed to evil by the very nature and condemned for eternity. On the other hand, if they were not one of God's works, then they would be eternal like God, in which the case there would be many sovereign powers. So here they're saying that if God didn't create them, because God wouldn't create them, because God would never create something that's going to be stuck in an evil path forever, because God is just and good. So if it wasn't God that created them, then the demons would have to have existed since forever, so they would have to have been as infinite as God, so which would mean that there would be several powers, but we know God is the only power, he's the first, so God would never create something that was stuck to be evil forever. The first condition for every doctrine is that it be logical. Therefore, in its absolute meaning, the doctrines of demons lack this essential point. In the belief of less evolved creatures that do not understand the attributes of God, it is inconceivable that alongside their evil deities, they also believe in the existence of demons. Nevertheless, for those who accept the goodness of God as an attribute per excellence, it would negate the divine goodness and be illogical and contradictory to suppose that God would have created beings dedicated to evil and destined to indulge in it forever. So here they're saying that they're just saying again that God would never create beings this evil, and the meaning of and there's no logical point to this, because what they're saying, that for there to be something true, there has to be something logical, a logical point about it. And they're saying that God would never want to keep beings bad for eternity, and what would be the point of that? So they're saying that this doesn't really make sense for there to be real demons. Proponents of demons find support in the words of Christ, and we will certainly not contest the authority of his teachings. We would like to see them more in individual hearts than on their lips. But can they be certain of the meaning he attributed to the word demon? After all, do we not know the allegorical form is one of the characteristics of his language? Should everyone contained in the gospel be taken literally? We need no further proof beyond this passage. So what they're saying here is that, yes, a lot of people think that there are demons because Jesus himself said that there were. Well, when he was speaking, he used that term, so they believe, oh, it has to be true. And while they're saying that, we're not going to say that what Jesus said is incorrect, because we know Jesus was one of these pure spirits. So they said, well, we're not going to say he was incorrect, but maybe we shouldn't take it literally, because he was expressing it in the way that the people of the time would understand. Because at that time, maybe all the people knew were angels and demons, so he couldn't use a different term because they wouldn't know. So he was putting it in a way that they would understand, and it was a way for the people of the time, and we shouldn't take everything so literally. And here they say that they have a proof of a passage that Jesus said. So it says, immediately after those days of affliction, the sun shall be darkened, the moon shall not give its light, the stars shall fall from heaven, and the power of heaven shall be shaken. Verily I say unto you this, generations shall not pass before all these things are fulfilled. Have we not seen the form of the biblical text contradicted by science, whether it refers to the creation and movement of the earth? Could it not be the same regarding certain figures expressions employed by Christ, who had to speak according to the time and region in which he found himself? Christ could not have consciously made an erroneous statement. Therefore, if in his words there are things that seem to contradict reason, it is either because we have not understood them or because we have wrongly interpreted them. So they're saying that if we see something that God says and we take it and we don't understand it and it doesn't seem to make sense, we know that Jesus, being a pure spirit, being perfect, that he wouldn't make a mistake. He wouldn't make these errors. So if something seems contradictory, or if it's not really making logical sense to us, then one, we didn't understand it correctly, or we have to take it, or we're wrongly interpreting it, because we have to see that was for the people of that time, and now let's apply it to today, and it's going to be different, because in Jesus' time, even 100 years ago, there weren't even cell phones, there weren't computers, there weren't internet. So even that much has changed from us. We couldn't connect to people in 1 second across the world. So as time changes, we need to adapt to that and interpret things differently. They might still apply to today, but maybe not in the same literal way. Humans have treated demons the same as they have treated angels. Just as they have believed in the existence of beings perfect from all eternity, they have also taken the least evolved spirits as beings who will be evil forever. The word demon should therefore be understood as referring to impure spirits, who often are no better than the beings normally designated by the name, but with this difference: their state is only temporary. They are the imperfect spirits who protest against their trials, and as a result they will have to endure them for a long time. Nevertheless, they will finally arrive at perfection after having made the decision to do so. We might accept the term demons with this restriction, because it is generally understood according to its exclusion, meaning nowadays it could lead to error and give credence to the belief in the existence of beings created specifically for evil. So here they're saying that, looking at the term of demons, that we can take it to mean the imperfect spirits, the impure spirits, who they're still stuck on their trials. They're still stuck as that kid who won't study and then they fail, and then they won't study and then they fail, and they're stuck doing that forever and ever and ever. So they're stuck doing that forever, but eventually that forever ends and they'll finally move on and they'll finally go on to the next trial. So the one distinction that maybe they're impure and they still have a lot to get to, but this state, it's only temporary. And that's what's important to note, because the term demons make it seem like they're going to be impure and they're going to be evil forever, but we know that that's not the case. So this is temporary, and eventually they'll learn that you need to study to move on to pass the test, to move on. And eventually they'll move on, and then they'll be faced with another trial, and they will reach perfection. It'll just take them much, much longer, but they will get there. As for Satan, it is obvious that he is the personification of evil in allegorical form, because it is impossible to believe in a maleficent being who fights on part against the divinity, and whose sole concern is to contrive God's design. Since humans need images and figures to impress their imagination, they have depicted incorporeal beings with material forms, endowing with attributes they portray their qualities or defects. Thus, in wishing to personify time, the ancient picture is an old man with a sink and an hourglass. In this case, it would be contrary to common sense to portray time as a youth. The same was true of the allegory of fortune, truth, etc. In modern times, humans represent the angels or pure spirits as radiant beings with white wings symbolize purity, while they portray Satan with horns, claws, and other bestial attributes, symbolizing the passions. Common folk, who are prone to things literally, see real entities in these symbols, as they are formed regarding Saturn as the allegory of time. So here he finishes off saying that as Satan, there's definitely not one specific spirit who is evil forever and who controls all the evil beings, and it's definitely not like that. But for people, and even today we can see that, is that sometimes we need to put a face to something to be able to believe in it, to imagine it. Sometimes we can't imagine something in ourselves, like God. Everyone sees God as this old man in the clouds. There's always all these pictures. Or here they're saying that time is portrayed as an old man with an hourglass, because we can't imagine something without putting that kind of face to it. Or anything, or angels that we see as that they're in white and they have these wings and they're so pure, and that demons or Satan has horns and is red. And so it's just a way for us to imagine it, and we shouldn't take it literally. It's just that some people, they need an image to be able to believe in it. Sometimes people can't imagine something on their own. They can't imagine something that doesn't have a specific form, so we personify it and we make it into a person so that we can understand it, because we know that time isn't a person, but we still make it a person so that we can better understand it. So that finishes off chapter 1 of part 2, and next week we'll move on to chapter 2, which is the incarnation of spirits, which is the purpose of incarnation and why we reincarnate. So that should be pretty exciting to learn about. But before we leave off today, I'd like to finish with our daily book of positive quotations for today's date, January 24th. And this one today is titled Simpler Times. Firelight will not let you read fine stories, but its warmth won't let you see the dust on the floor. The most luxurious homes are no more comfortable in the snowstorm than a warm, dry cabin in the woods. The nicest of lives means little when our needs are simple. Warmth when we're cold, food when we're hungry, sleep when we're tired. We wish for so many things that we think will bring us happiness, yet we often find ourselves looking back fondly on simpler times. What small thing in my life brings me pleasure? I will recognize them today and be thankful for them. So hopefully we can take that message that we learned today and in the Spirits book and really take that throughout the rest of our week and try and put that so that we improve our lives, that we don't be stuck on that same test not studying, doing the test again, not studying, doing the test again. Maybe we understand that now we should study and move on so that we can move on to bigger and better things and get over that stubborn phase. If at all you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, anything at all, feel free to email me at cardacradioforteens@gmail.com and I'll get back to you right away. This has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.